Good morning, guys. Welcome to another edition of How to Yard. Today we find ourselves in the domestic row. It's not often that we're in this section. I happened to walk by something I couldn't pass up. Right here we are looking at a Plymouth Laser. This one right here is the Plymouth RS. And what does that mean? Boom, turbo. But not only is it the turbocharged Plymouth, it is also all-wheel drive. This right here is pretty much the Mitsubishi Eclipse, which comes with the 4G63, and it's also turbocharged. Except this one would be considered the GSX because it is all-wheel drive. This thing is super stock, and it doesn't look crashed other than what we see here. Super clean across the whole body. I don't see any aftermarket suspension. The wheels are not to the vehicle, they're a Hyundai wheel. They could have put those on when they brought the car. But why is it here? There are many reasons why cars get to the junkyard. And unfortunately we use that term junk, and then that term right there associates things to not being any good. That's not particularly true. Most yards like this, you pull recyclers. That's what they are. They're in the business of recycling the metal and the aluminum, the catalytic converters off the vehicles, and the cars are out here in the yard to make a little bit of extra cash before they get processed. The best of my knowledge, yards like this get their vehicles mostly from tow yards. Tow yards get their vehicles for a number of reasons. Some could be for whatever reason that car was impounded. Perhaps that person didn't want to pay the impound fees, or I don't know, there's got to be some kind of thing that we'll do some further investigation about how long a car is in the impound lot before they take over ownership, and then of course then they bring it straight to the yard and they get paid on it regardless what it is. So could that be the reason with this? Let's take a closer look at this car. Opening the door, it is in really good condition considering its age and year. Everything is here. Alright, it is the turbocharged version. You can see the boost gauge that comes on it. Even the keys are with it. That's unusual, so that could mean that it was sold by the owner. Let's check out how it shifts. It seems to be going in all the gears. The clutch seems firm, which means there's still fluid in there. Look, the floor mats, they even have in a plastic bag. This leads me to believe that the owner sold it directly to the yard. Why would they do that? Maybe it was a disgruntled mom and they was tired of the car being on the side of the house and sold it from underneath her son. Who knows? Let's take a look under the hood. Under the hood, we see something that's indicative. Is this the factory red valve cover? Is that how the lasers come? I don't know a whole lot about these. You know, back in the days in the early 2000s when I was a young enthusiast, it seemed like I knew everything there was about all the cars. I bought every single magazine. I read them front to back. Sport Car was my favorite magazine. We're talking a 200-page magazine. I would learn so much from that stuff. But it's amazing how much information you forget without using that information regularly. I got into the Honda scene because that's what I happened to have at the time. Then all my friends got into Hondas and that's what we worked on. And then when you get into a group of people, you just kind of stay there. But that doesn't mean that I didn't know a whole lot about this stuff. The first generation 4G63 is more sought out for than the second generation 4G63. So we know that there's somebody's gonna want this. But if we look on how stock it is, look, stock turbo. We don't see a boost gauge on it. We have the wiring harness, everything's here. New alternator. The air box is in here. Looks came factory equipped with a Canon air filter. I mean, this thing looks great. Upon further investigation, we got a claim number here, State Farm Insurance, right? Not all of them have this information. That could mean that this was purchased by auction maybe, right? Because we have some information like this. The type of loss it was through State Farm, it says it was a collision, right? And it happened here in Phoenix, and it wasn't too long ago, a couple of months ago. Look, it even says that it starts. So if we had our own power supply here with the key, who knows? I could probably just start this thing right here, assuming that there was oil in it, which there's not. So what collision did this have, right? Could it have been just that thing up front on the bumper and that was enough to total it out? Does that mean that this runs? You know, this person maybe have just took the cash and walked away from it and was fine with that. Maybe this motor's good. You know, we don't know, but you know what? If it is good, that is the reward from the risk we take when we get something like this. So we're gonna leave with the engine, the transmission, the wiring harness, and most likely the ECU. I'm sure there's somebody out there is going to tell me to take the drive line and rear differential. Maybe that's something we could use in the Honda game. Geez, I don't know. It really depends on how much they're gonna charge us for it. I don't have a huge market in the Mitsubishi community. it might be harder for me to sell this, you know, and we can't sit on a whole lot of capital because we got to keep moving forward. We're going to start by getting our carpets out and start taking the wheels off, pull everything out from the bottom first. I have done a swap on one of these before. It was a long time ago. It may look like I'm a newbie on this one. That's how it's going to be. You know, as our business progresses, this is stuff that we're going to start getting more into. We're going to branch out of just the Honda game and start getting into the other platforms. Maybe not so much for us to sell, but there's going to be somebody out there that's in the same business as we are, right? There's going to be somebody that's into Subarus and Mitsubishis and Toyotas and knows the stuff that works and sells well for them. They may need me or my crew that we're putting together right now to pull the stuff for them. If you're not following us on our Instagram page, I encourage you to. That's at Hush Performance. In my latest post, I talked about my half-inch Milwaukee gun. It decided to take a break. Something went wrong with it, and I wasn't quite sure what happened. All I know now is I don't have one, and I should have multiples. All right, Milwaukee does have a 5-year warranty program. Mine happened to fit within that. All you have to do is send it back in. They're going to read the serial numbers off of it to determine that it's within the warranty range. Now that I'm out here without the half-inch gun, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get the wheels off. And I was hoping that there would be a 19s because my 3/8 ratchet might take it off. I only have a 21.5-inch, so how am I going to break the lug nut loose? If I needed to get an axle nut off with a breaker bar or this long half-inch right here, what I would normally do is stick a screwdriver in between the rotor. Well, that's what I'm going to do here. I have to use a stubby to be able to get in there, and so I'm sticking it in the rotor right now, and it's going to rotate and it'll lock itself up against the caliper. I also locked the steering wheel to keep the wheel from moving, and there you go. So it worked out, and I should be able to do that with the axle nut as well. The axle nuts on these have a cotter pin. We're going to make real easy work of this. Basically what I'm going to do is just cut off one of the ends, and then I'm going to use the other end as a pry and just pull it out. There. I'm going to use the same technique as I did on the lug nut, on the axle nut here. Just stick a screwdriver in the bottom, lock it in place, and then just break loose. The suspension looks pretty similar to our RSX and EP3 stuff that we work on. So the strut's attached to the spindle, but using 2 bolts right here. These look like they're going to be 17s on both sides. Then there's also going to be a brake line here. With the brake line disconnected from the caliper, this whole thing will swing out, allowing our axles to push through. So there we go. Looks like we got away without having to take the brake line off. That could just been messy, and I don't like to get messy. Alright, now that we're underneath the car, I'm just kind of looking at how the subframe on this works. Looks like we have a cross beam that goes across from front to back, much like Accords or early model Integras have. No big deal, we could take that off. This front cross member here holds the motor mounts. It looks like this will unbolt too, so I'll probably drop that as well. It doesn't look like it holds up the radiator. It's got its own supports, so that shouldn't be a problem. It doesn't look like there's one in the rear. And then now looking at the driveline, pretty simple. It doesn't unbolt like our B-Series all-wheel drive stuff does. So that means the yoke probably just pulls out. To get that out, I'll probably have to unbolt it down over there. But while we're thinking about it, could this work for our Honda all-wheel drive stuff? I'm looking at the carrier bearing here too. It looks like in really good condition. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone's tried it yet, or I'm sure somebody has to have thought of it. And what we're trying to do is we don't want to buy stuff that's not going to sell, and especially since I don't have a market in the Mitsubishi community. Generally, the forklifts damage the driveline. They bend them, but this one looks like in really good condition. So I don't want to leave it behind. So depending on how much it costs, I might grab it too. I also want to look at this exhaust. They cut the cat off, and that's something they do. It unbolts here, but there's no other flange other than all the way up to the turbo. And turbo bolts usually are seized. This one looks like they might have replaced those nuts up in there already before, maybe. Maybe they replaced the gasket. Yeah, as I'm looking closer, the gasket looks like it has been replaced. We'll break them loose. I call it a 3/8 because I have a 3/8 adapter in there. It's technically called a 1/4 inch because that's the size of the hex that goes into it. These back here are some 14s. Break them loose with my 1/2 inch. Man, let me tell you, I've been spoiled with my gun. I definitely don't want to come here without it again. Usually when it comes out hard like that, that means it's stripped or it's going to. The threads get really, really hot and they kind of melt themselves to each other. Yeah, I want to get this thing completely out of the way. I was considering just kind of spinning it around, but it looks like it might interfere with my drive line, so let's go ahead and get it off all the way. Yeah, it was jammed up in there pretty good, but I did loosen it enough to where I did spin it out of the way of our driveline, so I don't think that's going to be a problem at all now. Now looking forward, we'll work on this exhaust, then figure out the driveline, and then that might finish us up underneath here. Let's take a look at these axles. Okay, we have one that's coming in here, and to my surprise on the GSX, there's an intermediate shaft. Is there an intermediate shaft on the other 4G63, the front wheel drive? For some reason I thought they still had one long axle. Either way, that's really cool that they have that, and I'll make sure that I'll take the intermediate shaft. I probably won't take the axle. To remove the exhaust, I'm going to start with this combo wrench right here. This is a set by Snap-on. It's a 12-14 combo. A lot of my Snap-on friends, I've seen this in their toolbox. I really like it. It's great for breaking stuff like this loose. And then I'll follow up with my battery ratchet. Taking the downpipe from the turbo, it looks like there's 2 bolts that hold it on, and I was suspect that they were 19, and it was. And I just barely turned the nut, and one of them's starting to come off already. That's cool, but that means there's probably an exhaust leak there. Let's see the other one here. Alright, so that one feels like it's on a little tighter. But yeah, but it wasn't very tight at all, which is good because we want this to come off easy. Oh yeah, everything is just coming off really nice so far. This is really nice. I couldn't imagine what all this stuff would feel like over on the East Coast. If you guys tried pulling one of these out in the East Coast, tell me how rusty everything is. Next, we're going to take the cross member off. Looking closer to get this off, looks like I have to take this off. This then is connected over there. Doesn't look like that big of a deal. Alright, some say why take this off altogether? Well, from experience, when I have mounts like this, when the engine needs to come out, we pull it out at an angle and then it binds up on here. This looks like so much easier to work with this just gone. So before we drop this completely, I'm going to start right here on the motor mount. I'm going to take this bolt directly out, then we'll start over here, then we'll start on this guy. We're going to start this off. Looks like it's a 14. We'll break it loose. I'm going to use my combo wrench over here, my 12-14 on the other side. Alright, then we'll come in here with the battery ratchet. Looks like our battery's about to die in this too. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, hold on. This is the bigger batteries available for this size battery ratchet. The bigger batteries work really good, and I'm really happy with its charging capabilities and how long it lasts, except its construction. It pulls out, like the little tabs, they broke off. Look, you can see them right there. And that means I have to hold this in by hand. And that totally blows. But they're pretty cheap battery, and so far it works really well, but you know, is that something I want to deal with? Look, I mean, have a hard time putting it back on. Right, there's one more bolt that holds it. It looks like this one has been replaced before. Those right there are 13s. If you're the kind of guy that brings only the tools you think you're going to need, you know, that's fine. But as a professional, I have run into this many times. You know, I get scrutinized for how many tools I bring. But you know what? I go home with what I need. And I have the tools to take this off. You know, a 13 isn't something we normally see in a Japanese vehicle, but I bring them and I'm prepared. I can get that off no problem. It looks like that one's going to be a 17 also. This is the cross member that runs from the front to the back that we're going to need to take off also, so we can get the front cross member out. And then these don't feel as bad as the other ones do, so I should be able to use my 3/8 gun to get it the rest of the way off. Now we're moving towards the back. It looks like there's 4. One here, There's a set here, and then a set back there. Those, at first glance, look like 14s. Moving to the front cross member, this seems odd. Those guys that are familiar working with this, let me know. Alright, that fits tight. It doesn't look like it's too stripped, or maybe it is, but it suggests this right here is a 16 and a 17 is too big for it. But the other side is a nut, but that's a 17. So is that normal? 17 on one side, 16 on the other? Oh, that's in there good. Okay, so yeah, there's some damage here. I see the crash now. Looks like this front core support's jacked up, and so is this, and they got a bunch of washers in there, and so it's making it really tight. Man, it would have been really nice to have my 1/2 inch gun for this. Alright, so that's 16. I don't think that's supposed to be there. Bunch of washers. You can see the crash here. I didn't notice before. So it looks like whatever hit there, it might have knocked that off. And then I'm looking over here and might have hit the harness a little bit too, and they had to do some repairs. But look closely. Look at this little window right here. I'm trying to loosen this bolt, but I can't. And then I'm looking up here, and the bolt is just spinning in there. So that means there's a nut inside that window somewhere. So that should be fun. But the other side's coming out pretty easy. Alright, it was getting too tough, it's getting too hot, and I'm taking too much time. So I'm gonna do something maybe some of you guys were like, hey, you know, you need to do this. So I took the lower bolt out of this bracket here, and there's one hidden way up there by the turbo. I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to get it, but I got an extension attached to it, you can see here. And I'll be able to get my ratchet on there. All the problems in the world trying to find it. Alright, it was pretty difficult to try to get from the bottom, so I don't know what I was thinking, so I'm going to move up on top now. I'm going to remove the radiator right now. I could undo the hoses and all that stuff, and that's going to give me a ton of room up here, and then I'm pretty much done from underneath anyway. We have a lot more room now. There was quite a bit of water left in there. We got plenty of room up here now to get to the bolt wherever it's at. Then we'll move to the intercooler plumbing here. This is probably something that I'm going to take and I'll show you pretty closely. I'll give you a look at the side mount intercooler here in a moment. The side mounts and the turbos off of these engines have been pillaged by Honda guys for years. These injectors work directly with AWD 0 or even Prelude injector clips. And so I'm probably going to leave with the side mount intercooler too. It's probably something that somebody wants. You know, it's still a blind. There we go. The way that it feels, it looks like there's going to be more than one. Oh, no. Alright, it's off, but the way that it's jammed in there, I'm not going to be able to take it all the way out. We'll start on this charge pipe. You know what's cool about this charge pipe too is that it has a blow-off valve integrated into it. That's another thing that the Honda guys would pillage. Pretty much anything that made this thing turboed, besides the charge pipe, we would take. Blow-off valve, the intercooler, the injectors, the turbo. You know, the turbo on this, we would mate to like a CRX HF exhaust manifold because it was a 4-bolt, and then there was adapter kits that you could bolt this turbo directly onto your car thing. It was also like that for the F22s also, because this flange right here was pretty close. You could just wobble it out a little bit and it would fit. With the charge pipe off, you could see all the things, right? Lots of vacuum. Look at this whole little vacuum bundle right here. So we're going to try to keep all this together. We're just going to disconnect stuff that's attached to the engine. Chances are more than likely this engine would go into a vehicle just like this. It would be a stock replacement of sorts. So that means pretty much everything else is already here. They just need the motor and transmission. The intercooler and blow-off valve stuff, I'm pretty much going to keep because I think that intercooler could sell off because of all the reasons I just explained, along with the blow-off valve there. And here's the blow-off valve right here. So this was the charge pipe. Blow-off valve's underneath of it, and then it blows right in back into the intake tube, right into the turbo. So what I'm working on here is just trying to get everything out of the way of getting the engine out and all the things that are attached to it. So the air box and the charge pipe here. Looking for all the bolts. Looks like there's a couple of 10mm here. That might have done it. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so the air box, we have a lot of vacuum that's attached to it. I'm not going to cut anything, I'm just taking it off so that we can put it all back on. With the air box out, I was able to grab the battery box and moved it out of the way too. And so it shows us all our vacuum stuff. Here's something that goes to the charcoal canister. So it looks like it'll just pull right out. And this looks fragile, right? And so somebody who has one of these cars might want this. So I'm gonna just set that on the motor because there's lots of vacuum and I don't want to take them off. Charge harness too, right? This was bolted on the firewall. We'll keep that part of the accessories here. And we have our shift cables. Now, somebody who is putting this in their car already, chances are they have these. And of course, if they don't, well, I'm not gonna take them just because I want to save that much more money. This is a little different than our older Hondas. This has a cable-driven speedometer, except how this one is attached is it's screwed on. That's a lot easier to work with than our older Hondas, whereas they have a clip that people refer to as the Jesus clip. I don't know why they call it that way, but look, it just screws on and off. That's pretty cool. As we're finishing up the passenger side, we have about one last thing, and that's the hydraulic line here. This is for the slave cylinder. Now, this line comes down to the slave cylinder, which is down there, and then comes up here to this bulkhead. This is a nice little piece, so what I'm going to do is disconnect it from here, and then have this hose hanging out over here. You'll want to use a tool like this every time on a fitting like that. It's called a line wrench. This keeps from rounding off the head of this fitting that goes in there. Kind of wraps around the whole fitting itself to keep from rounding it off. Alright guys, we're missing a lot. This camera is just getting super hot in this weather. It's probably 110 or hotter out here. So there's a lot of things that we missed, but we'll try to capture what we can. Right here is this crazy throttle cable. Look at this. So it comes in from the firewall into this, goes over there to the cruise control, and then this goes back into the throttle body itself. It's crazy. I've seen this in Hondas. So we just open up this box and we're just going to loosen the cables that are going to our engine, and we're going to lay them over the intake manifold. From what I can tell, everything is disconnected from the chassis. There's whatever this is, a bunch of different things that look important, a lot of vacuum lines like I was telling you about. We're just going to set them up over there. And then our power steering line is off too. This is weird, right? This is definitely different than the Hondas, right? Usually, here's something else. This right here is called the resistor box. This is a unit that powers a different type of resistance to these injectors. There's a low impedance and a high impedance style, right? So in a case where you need a low impedance, you'll need a resistor box for that particular injector. On this harness, it looks like it's integrated into the engine harness, but unlike a Honda, it doesn't look like the engine harness can disconnect from the cabin harness. That makes me a bit sad because the rest of the harness is also integrated into the chassis, so that means the wiring harness is part of the car, including the engine harness. It looks like I might be cutting it away, right? So there's still probably a lot of plugs people would want on the engine. We're gonna have to cut it from the chassis, but we'll make sure to keep that resistor box as well. The banjo is attached to this, and then there's a banjo bolt that goes through it, but this right here, well, this is a little bit different. So we got a banjo and a banjo bolt, except it's more like a banjo nut. Right, so this goes down there, and then the nut goes on top of it. That's just a little bit different. This lower subframe here, I was able to swing up out of the way here. There it is. So it's still attached up over there, but I got it. But if you didn't know, the AC compressor is on the back of this engine. So the only thing I really have to do is disconnect the AC lines up there. And then I believe everything else is done other than working on this driveline now. Working on the driveline, we got to the carrier bearing here. We have two 14s that are holding it on. This exhaust line can get out of the way. This looks like it's going to be a 12. And then we have it connected to the rear differential. We're going to unbolt the driveline from the differential. We'll disconnect both carrier bearings over here. The whole thing will drop down from this side, assuming we get this whole exhaust out of the way, and I'll be able to just slide it out of the end of the transmission over there. Whoa. No way, a 13. Oh, okay, that one's a 13. Oh, how annoying. The driveline came down just like I thought it would. It is just too hot, man. My camera keeps turning off on me and we're just missing so much good stuff. So it did drop down, move the couplers, everything like I said. It worked just like that. Now our second issue is this right here, okay? All right, so we have this, which I had to get all the way from over there, drag it all the way over here, and then of course they sat a bunch of cars in front of my row. So I had to try to get the picker around the car. Now I'm stuck. Man, this isn't the first time I've had to deal with this either. It's pretty tough, man, and this is the stuff that really needs to get on the video, because even me, I want to call it quits. This is a vehicle I haven't worked on yet, so everything's a little bit slow, and we start getting the chills. That usually means that's heat stroke starting to catch on. Some could say it's because I'm wearing black. Well, until you try it, don't knock it, and it doesn't have much to do with it. It's just the fact that it's just hot, period. We'll get as much footage as we can while you know, my camera's cooking in the sun. I'm going to be taking the hood off of this also. This is something else I bring. This is a universal hood prop here. It'll help keep the hood in place. You know, if you had the hood prop just on one side, as you go to take it off the other side, if you're by yourself, it'll tilt and fall over and make it pretty difficult. Having the single hood prop right there makes things a little bit easier. We have our seat belt strap on here. This engine didn't have a timing cover on this side. You can see they painted it here, but they might have painted it because they had it apart. It looks like there's a new timing belt on it. But I grabbed a piece of steel to help protect it as the strap's going to kind of engage the belt itself. Second, here also is the motor mount. You know, they do some weird stuff with some redundancies. They have two 14 nuts on this side, but it's one piece that goes through to a 17, and on this one I do have my 17-19 combo long extension wrench. This motor mount's going to come out a lot like all the other Hondas I work on. This one has two bolts, one right there and then one right there. Those are both 17s. Drop those, and then the whole engine's going to drop down, but the hoist is going to catch it. The engine's out, it's on the wheelbarrow. Let me tell you, that was hard. These things suck, man. You know, this place has great terms as far as, you know, the accessories, and they even have a membership program where I'm gonna get 20% off because I'm a member. That's awesome, man, but dang, dude, these barrels suck. You know, other yards have it on lock, man, where they have big old platforms we can fit everything on, man, and that's super conducive. Dude, I wanted to quit so bad here, you know, but I can't quit my job, you know, so I gotta be out here. This is tough. This was definitely taxing, but now that I have experience, I know the next time it's gonna be much easier. But we got to get on it, man. I got to build my platform. I got to get something with a cooler, water, ice. It was a tough one. I need to bring multiple cameras. Hey guys, thanks for watching. My camera overheated and I didn't get to close out that video. That particular day I was going for ECUs and I happened to stumble across the laser. I thought that it wasn't going to take me as long as it did. What you didn't see is it took 7 hours and it was blistering hot outside. It probably was around 115 degrees, usually in the dirt, and around the vehicle the ambient temperature is much higher than that. Actually almost left that engine behind. It was so hot, it was so frustrating, and then we had some issues with the total cost. I left the engine behind. So I have some pictures of what the compression came out to and what the engine cleaned up and looked like once we were finished. From some other previous videos, I've had some customers question about those particular engines or transmissions that I removed. So by the time you see this video, the engine will be available. So if there's any parts that you would like off of it, let us know in the comments or contact us directly. You can go to our website at hushperformance.com, leave us an email there. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure to check out our sister channel here at Vtec Academy. Make sure to check out our website at hushperformance.com. If you like these how to yard videos, I have a whole playlist right there on our YouTube channel. Thank you guys again. Happy tuning.